Hey folks, so I've seen an issue in the broader magical community that I wanted to talk about because I really do think it's going to benefit people to bring this to people's attention, especially newer people who are just now stepping into these spaces and trying to get a lay of the land and the landscape, and they're encountering a lot of messages, especially on the internet, but also in books and our broader community and spaces that are sending mixed signals and messages, and hopefully this can create a broader conversation that will be helpful in getting you to a place where you can better discern some of the information you're encountering both on the internet as well as in person. Who am I? Why am I talking to you about this? Hey, I'm Maevius Lynn. If you're here for the first time, welcome. I'm a practicing occultist and ceremonial magician, and I love to talk to you all about scholarly stuff, and I bring that into my writing as my videos. But this is more of an opinion piece, so if you want more of my educational or how-to videos, go check out something else, but this is an opinion piece and just some observations I've had. So first and foremost, as you know, the title of the video is Everything is Not Wicca. And this has to do with the fact that I see again and again, when people enter a magical community or a specific tradition, they try to take a Wiccan context or a general polytheistic pagan perspective and start shoving the tradition into these little boxes where they may not belong, and in fact I would argue shouldn't be put in there. And so I'm seeing it happen with not just hoodoo and voodoo and some of these other traditions outside of my own, but I'm also seeing it in my tradition, which is a subset of ceremonial magic known as Thelema. And I'm seeing it happen quite a bit where people don't have the right framework to understanding the things they're encountering. And so they just start making assumptions and shoving things into boxes that perhaps they don't belong. And I'm talking everything from deities and making everything the same deity. Everything is the mother goddess in Wicca, including our beloved Babylon, and taking, Babylon is part of this dark divine feminine, and they're putting her in just this general mommy, beauty, sensual sexuality milieu and stripping her out of her context and initiatory framework that she exists in within Thelema, specifically within the system of the AA, which is an initiatory magical order. So we're seeing this with deities, right? And we're also seeing this with approaches for understanding celebrations of the holidays, of holy days. So let's spend a moment talking about holidays or holy days. So within the tradition of Thelema, which is my home, we do have holy days as spelled out in our central sacred holy text, the Book of the Law. And those are going to be your equinoxes, your solstices, as well as some unique to our tradition, which I think is a beautiful thing. And it brings forth an opportunity to dive deeper into Thelema, our values, our beliefs, our ways of understanding the world, our philosophy, all of those beautiful things, and the room for religion as well. And those are going to be the 3 days of the writing of the Book of the Law, and the first night of the prophet and his bride, sometimes referred to as Beast and Bride Day. That's a colloquial term. And when people enter Thelema, I noticed they didn't really have a good way of understanding what we celebrate and why we're celebrating it, for example. And instead of integrating into the culture, whether that's getting familiar with books or joining an online community or an in-person community or joining a group or organization, they just sort of pick and choose what they want, and they don't become a part of the community, and they don't actually read the books. They just sort of take our aesthetic and then slap it on whatever they want, which is typically this sort of eclectic witchcraft or Wicca. And because of that, I'm seeing a lot of new people especially just hang on to the Wiccan Wheel of the Year and be like, oh yeah, I celebrate the Wiccan Wheel of the Year. And there's nothing wrong with that. But what is wrong is when you're not doing it intentionally and you're not understanding the tradition you're taking from enough to honor it. So in Thelema, our holy days actually came before Gerald Gardner made the Wiccan Wheel of the Year. I'm sure a lot of people of various traditions can relate to that. And in Thelema, we don't recognize or celebrate the cross quarters. And in just having a concept and understanding of what the original Thelemic holy texts are, so you can appreciate why we are celebrating these days, how they are connected to deeper concepts in our community and our values and our philosophy and our cosmology, all of this great stuff. And taking a time, if you're exploring Thelema, to get to know that. Now, I wrote a book for that. This isn't just a plug for my book, but it's available for pre-order now if you do want to deep dive and understand the holy days of Thelema or our holidays. But the important thing here is to draw attention to the fact that not every magical tradition is the same. They have beautiful diversity and variations in how they approach understanding the world, the philosophy, the magic, how magic even works, why it works. And when you understand these deeper concepts, your world is so much bigger. So my call to action for people who are interested in the subject of just everything sort of getting muddled in the magical community is, along your path of making your magical practice and your beliefs and whatever that looks like for you, yourself and your own, when you are borrowing from traditions, when you are doing your dip and dabble, take time to understand what's going on with that tradition. Take time to appreciate what they consider holy and sacred. In the case of Thelema, we have a canon of holy books. Read through them. Please do. They're beautiful. It's really beautiful poetry. And of course, that's open-ended of what that means to you. Atheists can approach that as a beautiful work of art, a beautiful work of poetry that speaks to the human soul and the human condition. People who are polytheistic find great meaning and context of our works and what that means. So I'm not telling you what to believe, but I am inviting you to dig a little bit deeper and appreciate that. And when you do that, I truly believe your world is so much bigger, so much brighter, so much more interesting. And when you have a toolkit of understanding so many more things, when you tailor that to be your own and your own practice, that'll be so much more meaningful to you. So I have one more thought, and that's when I encounter people who end up in my space, which what a blessing it is, especially newer people, and they say, hey, I was reading in this one book that this is the way it is, or someone told me that this is the way you do magic, and this is blah, blah, blah. That might be true for that person who wrote that book in their context, either their own personal beliefs or their own tradition. So when you are setting up your roadmap or your understanding of magic in the magical communities, you really need to understand that we have different traditions, and within those traditions, different beliefs. We have a different understanding of the world, we have different philosophies we live by, we have different practices. So on the superficial level, we might use different words, we might be doing different rituals, we may approach ritual differently, or we may dress differently for different reasons. But those are just sort of superficial indicators of very profoundly different beliefs. Even within Thelema, we have different, smaller groups with different beliefs and different practices, different culture, and that's a beautiful thing. But I think in order to intentionally engage with this diversity and this buffet of different things to check out, you have to understand first they're different. So I have friends from a lot of different traditions, folk magic, chaos magic, traditional witchcraft, and I think that's so fantastic to see the world through their eyes and get to know new people, their new experiences, and that doesn't make it right or wrong. And we don't have to agree with everyone, right? So I have my own beliefs and my own tradition, and some people have called me quite traditional in how I view things, because I return them back to the tradition as it was started by Aleister Crowley and Rose Edith Kelly and all of the beautiful Thelemites who came before me. And for those who don't know, Thelemite means practitioner of Thelema. That term also comes out of our Book of the Law. But I have my own way of seeing things. And so if you were to go to me for advice in your magical practice, I would give you the perspective of a Thelemite practitioner, and specifically a more traditional one. If you even go to another Thelemite who's maybe perhaps integrated more things like chaos magic into their practice, they're going to tell you something different, right? And that doesn't mean it's wrong and bad. It's just we're different people from different traditions. And so I hope you keep that in mind as you are going through the internet and going through your bookstore or your occult shop or your community or your pagan gathering, and you're encountering these different people. You're encountering folk witches, you're encountering druids, you're encountering, heathens. And maybe if you're lucky, you'll encounter some of the super rare traditions, because there's not many of us Thelemites, but maybe you'll run into a Thelemite and you'll have a conversation and they'll tell you what they believe and how they're doing things and why they're doing it. And having the context to appreciate, oh, so this is a different belief system. That doesn't mean it's inherently wrong, but it is a different way of viewing things. And maybe taking time to get to know a little bit about that person and the context they're coming from. And especially if you plan to start practicing and weaving in some of these practices and beliefs into your own. I think that's a fantastic thing. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to encourage you to be intentional about it. It's going to benefit you. And when you're intentional about it and you take the time to get to know the tradition you're taking from, that is to say, if it's an open practice, I know people in the comments are like, well, you didn't talk about closed practices. Yeah, because they're off the table, right? So, but Thelema is an open practice. But I think in order to get the most out of Thelema, you have to do a little bit of reading, do a little bit of work, a little bit of a deep dive. It's a little bit more challenging to get into Thelema. One moment. It's a little bit of a challenge because it's so dense and we use very specific language about stuff. But once you go over those hurdles, it's going to be so valuable for you. And I just encourage you to keep going with it and take that time to study and reflect and get to know your larger community and be open-minded. So thanks so much for joining me in this discussion today. Check me out other places too, including my book. That's pretty cool. I wrote a book. Thanks, y'all. As always, I'm the center of expression for the primal will to good, and so are you.